Welcome back to Reimagine 2020. I'm Yonah Hochhauser, and today I'm joined by Ron Melamed, Head of Business Development at Orbs and Head of Research at the Hexa Foundation. Ron, thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, Yonah. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Now, according to Orbs, to start off, let's get some background on Orbs. According to you guys are a hybrid blockchain designed for the real world, and you guys build the apps that provide guarantees to users. What do you mean by a hybrid blockchain, and what guarantees are you providing to users?
Yeah, so of course, I'll start with a hybrid. So the way we see blockchain, especially corporate blockchain, usually divided into permissioned infrastructure and permissionless infrastructure. Now, most of the corporate solutions are purely permissioned. The way we see it is that the real use of blockchain should be permissionless. Okay. However, it will take time before we get there. And talking to many corporates and large enterprise organizations, government, etc., they're still not quite there yet. And the way we look at it is kind of, the public cloud versus private cloud. It took so long for even banks, to open up and allow access from an outer network, which 30 years ago might have sounded like complete science fiction, right? You're accessing your bank account not through the branch talking to a banker, but through this small black box that you have in your pocket. So this concept is developing, but it's gradually. So the idea of a hybrid blockchain is mostly combining both concepts of a permission blockchain, permission infrastructure, and a permissionless. And our solution is unique in the sense that while you are able to start with a fully permissioned infrastructure, when you want to evolve into the permissionless environment, which in our view would happen at some point, you can do it within the same solution. So you would not have to redesign everything. You would not have to start over. You would just take what you have, which is, for instance, with a blockchain, you have nodes. So it's first, you're the one who appointed all the nodes. They're all permissioned under your governance, right? Everything. But later on, once you do realize the added value of opening up, again, very gradually, very slowly, but at some point you will do that. You can do this with the same infrastructure when you just allow additional nodes to join your network rather than just having to deploy a complete new solution from scratch.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if we're speaking about nodes. Proof of work consensus model is kind of what powered the original big blockchains like Bitcoin and historically Ethereum. But Ethereum has notoriously been trying to move over to a proof of stake model, and Orbs actually uses that. Orbs is actually a randomized proof of stake. Can you explain to me what that means, randomized proof of stake, kind of how it works and why it's better than other consensus models?
Yeah, so the idea of, first of all, the real distinction is between proof of work versus proof of stake. So obviously, proof of work is, in terms of energy and the power consumption is detrimental to the environment, right? And this is obviously our key decision right when we started was that we cannot have that, right? And talking about, innovation, you cannot develop something that, is consumes so much energy and is such a burden to the network, to the grid. So obviously it would have to be proof of stake. However, with proof of stake, you have, again, other challenges. And the main challenges, especially with a corporate solution, is how do you get it scalable and fast enough? So if you're looking, you're looking to provide a solution for a corporate, and then you say, oh, our solution supports 20 transactions per second, and obviously it's a no-go. So you have to be much more fast. In order to do that, you have to, design the best algorithm possible. So our concept was a randomized proof of stake, which means that you have a large pool of nodes who are, who the tokens or the token holder delegate their power to. However, per each block, a random set is chosen. So you get really the most out of two worlds. On one hand, you have a very large pool of potential nodes who participate in the next block's approval as the network propagates. So if someone does want to attack, he still has to attack, taking into account that there's a very large pool of nodes. However, per the specific block, in order to maximize and reach the highest speed possible, a smaller random set is chosen every time. And we can get into the details, who leads this, writing down of every block, right? But the idea is that you do not have to reach a consensus out of the entire pool, only of a consensus within this randomized set. So this is our concept of randomized proof of stake, which again, provides a very high scale, very fast blockchain. However, it is not, it does not, there's no, in terms of, the overall security, you're not giving up on anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see this a lot. It's kind of, there's this balance when trying to develop this new technology between you're trying to scale, you want the security. It seems like, with Orbs, a lot of the, and you touched about this in your last answer, a lot of the inherent design decisions were kind of made to accommodate, a wide variety, to accommodate both the dApps and the DAOs that are not well suited for the enterprise world. How do you balance accommodating enterprises with their specific needs? But on the other hand, you want to bring the innovation of those public permissionless blockchains, to the dApps and to the DAOs, whose needs are different. And it's kind of this pull from both sides. Yeah.
So it was these are all tough decisions that we had to make. And knowing that from the get-go, there will be no one blockchain that will take everything, right? And we believe that while, a lot of the innovation is driven by the community, by dApps, by DAOs, exactly as you mentioned. However, we do see corporates, and we do believe that in order for blockchain to gain serious momentum, right, beyond, the early adopters and, the distributed applications that, so far their adoption and, real usage is being somehow limited, putting cryptocurrencies aside and, DeFi and stuff like that. We do believe that the mass adoption, in order for it to really happen for blockchain in general, would have to be through an enterprise, through corporate. So we looked, we surveyed the market, and we could not find a solution that was, adapted as it should be, and for instance, there's certain aspects, knowing the corporate world, most of our team has worked for corporates, for a major part of their career, knowing what are the must-haves for a corporate in order for it to adopt the blockchain. And this is what we were aiming for in our design. And this is what we're trying to provide.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it does seem like enterprises are already kind of dipping their toes in the blockchain field, experimenting. A lot of them are running proof of concepts. And you mentioned that you guys are really focusing on that enterprise. But where are we in terms of full production for corporations and governments? Is it there? Is blockchain ready for the big time?
So personally, I think it definitely is. I think the main barrier is conceptual, with the customers, with the other side. However, looking at it through, over the past 3 years when we first started. So at first, when you started I remember talking to one bank, right, an Israeli bank, that we had this intro to blockchain presentation, and I told them a true story that a year and a half before that, one of my first tasks at Orbs was try and open a bank account, right, for the company who's just incorporated. And going into this, bank, the branch manager, she was a very nice lady, and she told me, listen, you seem like a very nice guy. We're not into Bitcoin. We're not into anything like that. Please leave, or else I'm going to call security, because we're not going to open up a bank account for you. And I did not mention the word Bitcoin even once. I talked about blockchain and what blockchain can do for banking, for government, for corporate. And all she could hear was Bitcoin, Bitcoin. And there I was a year and a half later, giving this deck to the board of directors of a bank, telling them, okay, this is what blockchain can do for you. So, this is what happened within a year and a half. And I think that corporates, again, every large corporate, every large bank, I'd say most governments have teams working on blockchain. They're still having a hard time figuring out what is it good for and what it can do for them, what are the risks they're willing to take, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, they realize that blockchain is there. So now the question is, what do you do with it and how do you adopt it, gradually enough for it to make sense? So I'm definitely convinced, and again, this is, I'm in the blockchain industry, right? If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't be here. That it will take some more time, but like we're seeing the adoption, we're seeing the organization that we're working with, that probably, and again, most of them have had blockchain teams for at least 2 years, some even more, and they see the value in blockchain. Again, it's still, it's growing. Even they still have hard times within the organization, being the ambassadors and, talking about and convincing other divisions that blockchain does have value. However, it takes time and, I'm sure it's going to grow with time.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting, point you made, how for such a long time, people made intrinsically, connected Bitcoin and blockchain and in the kind of for the good and for the bad. And a lot of times when coming to the traditional banks and stuff for the bad, you mentioned you guys getting rejected because all they could hear was Bitcoin. Are we at a point now where the people in power really understand that, wait, there is a difference here? I mean, you mentioned that a lot of them are trying to integrate blockchain. Is it a lack of them finding good use cases, or they have use cases and the technology is not there to implement that use case?
So the answer to the first question is definitely. Wherever we go, there's usually a blockchain team, and that would be our go-to points of contact, talking to these people. And luckily, and I'm very happy that there are no more discussions of blockchain does not necessarily equal Bitcoin, because, and again, even now, but like 2-3 years ago, it was complete, it was so difficult because it was not Bitcoin. Bitcoin itself, is Bitcoin, is maybe neutral. Is that Bitcoin, and all they can hear of was, and all they can think of, it's come to mind, articles about, the Silk Road. So if you're talking about Bitcoin, if you know about Bitcoin, oh, this must mean you're also into drug dealing over the internet, human trafficking, and all these horrible stuff. So please get out of my office. And we're not there anymore, luckily. And I think that every organization now realizes that blockchain is there. Again, as I said, still, I have to tell you, this is the number one. It's not, say, the $1 million, but $1 million, maybe the $1 billion. What is blockchain good for? And now the discussion is with many of these large, institutions, organizations, etc., is that they want to adopt it, but usually they have the wrong idea and the wrong use case. And this is where we come into, and we've said, in some cases, listen, and I'd say in most cases, trying to convince, listen, this is not a good use case for blockchain. And usually the discussion opens up is, listen, if you try to apply blockchain for the wrong use case, it's going to be horrible, because blockchain is quite binary. For the thing it's good for, it's absolutely amazing, and it can really take it to the next level. For the thing it's not, is trying to square the circle. It's going to be a failure. It's going to be expensive, and we don't want to be a part of a failure with your organization. So, great talking to you. You should leave blockchain alone for the time being for this use case. So again, the most difficult challenge is trying to understand the other side's challenges, and see whether blockchain fits, and only then start the work.
Now, I'm sure this really depends on the industry, but in your view, what has so far been the best use case you've seen for blockchain at an enterprise level? And then secondly, where do you see that it has the best potential? It's not there yet, but has the best potential as use case for enterprise.
So I think that perhaps the best use cases have been through supply chains, making them more transparent, more manageable in terms of being able to really understand where items are at, how the supply chain works, how are all the parties cooperating or not cooperating, and where there's a leakage. There also has been some use cases, with finance, which are also very interesting. Again, I'm not talking about cryptocurrency trading. Mostly, whatever concerns document notarization and trying to make all these processes much more smooth. That how can we all see who approved what and who's signing what document, and how can we all make sure that we all have access to the same version of document, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is also making a very big difference. I think that a very interesting industry that has not been influenced by blockchain yet, and there is huge room for improvement, is GovTech. And I think that so many aspects over there, which at first seem like the most boring solutions or products ever. Like if you talk to 20 years ago to someone, let's try to revolutionize GovTech, there would be no way. I mean, cyber is great, cloud is great, all these, internet, of course, but GovTech, I mean, who cares about GovTech? And I think that there's so much, and I think that this sector has been neglected, by innovation, by real innovation, trying to look at existing problems and trying to solve them. There's so many bureaucracy in so many countries. Again, there's so many corruption, and blockchain can really open up these, these bottlenecks and really make all these dark spots better. So I see huge potential over there.
For sure. I mean, it's transparent, it's mutable. These are really aspects that should make it excellent for that. Do you foresee a future where voting happens on the blockchain?
So it's a very interesting question. I just had yesterday this entrepreneur that we're in touch with who's trying to promote blockchain, voting over blockchain. I think it's an interesting question. I think that at some point, because the main problem over there, I mean, I think that one misconception that people have about blockchain, that most places that most people that we talk to, is that blockchain cannot help you verify the quality of your data, right? Because blockchain necessarily does two main things. One, it allows us, parties, to create one source of truth. We both see the exact same data, and now the question is, do we agree on this data, yes or no? As if we do, let's go on, right? We both see everything, we share everything. There's no my data or your data, there's our data, and everybody can see that and then proceed. The next thing is, now that we have a shared source of truth, right, a single point of view, and we're trying to run some computations, right, usually through smart contract, etc., then how can you make sure that I'm doing, that exactly what I'm doing, or vice versa, right? So using smart contracts, you can not only see the code, but you can also see what I'm doing to the data, what's my analysis process, whether I'm trying to manipulate it in any way, but you can see everything. So these are the two important, in my perspective, the most important new innovation with blockchain. Now with voting, that really depends where is the problem, right? Because let's say that in a certain, I don't know, state, and right, that the problem seems to be inputting the data, right? No one trusts the voting process, right? I want to, let's say I put a small piece of paper saying who I'm supporting for presidents or for the parliament, then I know that I put this piece of paper in the envelope and I put it right into this box. But So there's no question there. So the data in is what, the data that I put is what got in. The question is, with digital voting, let's say I pressed on a button saying I want candidate number 2. How do I know that this choice is not manipulated into, candidate number 3? So in those cases, blockchain cannot help. You would have to have very strong encryption and all sorts of other, digital ID. However, if you're trying to make sure that once we agree on the input, right, in order to avoid garbage in, garbage out, then blockchain is very, very, very good. However, my estimation is that it would take some time before most people would really come to trust digital voting in general. And again, it would have to be done gradually, but I think definitely there is value, trying to recap.
For sure. Okay, well, so basically it could fix some of the problem, but not all. It depends on what the problem is for the voting, exactly. Whether input or output. Switching gears a little bit, Orbs offers cross-chain interoperability. In your view, how crucial is it for the continued growth of blockchain technology and its adoption that the kind of blockchains kind of play nice with each other and allow for this cross-chain work, or is it fine that each blockchain kind of serves its purpose separately?
I think it's a must to have this interoperability because it's more of a. I think that I've never come to an industry in which competition was more of the most basic aspect. Again, as I mentioned, I don't see one blockchain for everything. So you have to have this interoperability, allowing chains to at least to communicate at some level. So I really think it's a must. And again, the whole philosophy of blockchain is sharing, right? So how can I say you really need to share everything, but now there's this other protocol? No, I'm not sharing anything with him. So it would be just kind of contradicting myself, which does not make sense, I think.
Is Orbs working with other projects to kind of achieve this concept of kind of a network of blockchains all working together?
So at this point, no. I don't know other protocols that are doing such a thing because, everyone tries to focus on what they do and tries to do it best. However, for instance, we provide interoperability with Ethereum. So any other protocol that provides interoperability with Ethereum, obviously, we could be interoperable with them. So, Ethereum being the most, I think now, the most trustful network that there is out there, no doubt about it, the most distributed network. So obviously, I think, again, that this might be some sort of a standard. So if you're interoperable with them, then you can be interoperable with everybody, right? You do not have to tweak to every other protocol out there. Obviously, it will take most of your time. But yeah, I mean, we do see this as a very, strong value of, not being a closed world of our own, because I think that, software has proven that, at least in most cases, being open is the way.
For sure. Speaking about sharing in this open world, Orbs is actually, one of the founding members of the Blockchain Education Alliance, which is a campaign for blockchain in education led by Mousebelt. Now, your team is made up of experienced engineers, academics, and researchers from Israel's top universities. What's your perspective, kind of at the university level, regarding training the workforce in computer science for Web 3.0?
So I'd say, usually universities, I think that, again, not trying to be too much of a cliche, is that it would be best, to provide you not knowledge, because you can provide you with tools, right? Not provide you, with a fish, but with fishing gear. So I think that this is what universities and academic institutions should do, is provide you the tools for you to acquire new knowledge by yourself. So yeah, there probably should be some courses about that. I'm not a computer science graduate, so I don't know exactly what's the curriculum. But from my academic history, then usually you're getting the basics, you know, and the basics and the background for everything at first, and only then you're getting into specific topics. So maybe that should be, you know, the advanced topics. But every you know, computer science graduate or whatever, any kind of, you know, exact sciences graduate for that matter, engineering, etc., should when he or she graduates, he should have, you know, enough tools into, you know, being able to learn new materials, new subject by themselves, and probably, you know, Web 3.0 would be one of those.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Now, you know, we're not talking face to face. We're talking over Zoom. And this is because, you know, of this, you know, COVID-19 pandemic that's you know, kind of taken over the world. And we now live in a world with kind of a major shift towards working from home. Do you think there's arisen from this, you know, a unique opportunity for blockchain technology kind of in this new remote world reality?
I think that the opportunity is, in a way it is, because I think that, you know, let's say 6 months ago, for instance, trying to acquire new customers, new business partners, at some point you had to go and meet them, right, in order to be considered as serious. But now it's practically impossible, you know, traveling to most countries or from most countries. So it forced people to change their paradigm. So I think, and again, working from home, right? If I told you 6 months ago that they're the largest companies in the world, Google, they'd say, you know, everybody can work from home, or your team, where you work, yeah, everybody can work from home. It would have sounded, well, you have to meet, you have to be in the same room to have, you know, a meeting, conference, whatever. But now, you know, reality is stronger, right? So we had to adapt. So, and it forced us to rethink things. So I think the same, again, while it might not have direct influence on blockchain, but it goes to show that maybe sometimes you need to stop for a second and try to rethink things, right? And blockchain really calls for that, right? Let's look at a problem. Now, we're always trying to attack it and approach it from this direction. And again, not using, you know, the most cliches, let's think out of the box, right? The stuff like this. But sometimes it does, you know, circumstances change, and now we cannot think from here. We have to try and think from this direction. So I think that blockchain calls for that, and hopefully it will make a difference, you know.
Well, you know, speaking about blockchain making a difference, it's not just the coronavirus, but in response to the horrific explosion in the port of Beirut, Orbs actually wrote an open letter to French President Macron explaining how the blockchain can help in the aid process. How does Orbs envision blockchain actually helping in aid?
So this open letter is actually based on a POC that we recently developed and delivered to our customer, which is one of the largest global financial organization, whose aim was to track and trace funds. And I think that you know, financial aid is you know, is a must. Unfortunately, right, as we wrote, there's always going to be a need for financial aid. However, there have been some, you know, unfortunate, you know, showcase cases that so much money was just gone, and no one was accountable for, and no one knows where it went. And even, you know, the largest aid organization realized that very large portions of the funds they're providing and, you know, raise are just going to the wrong hands. In some cases, it goes to the wrong corrupt hand. In other cases, it goes to really wrong malicious hands. So now people do want to donate. Countries want to donate. However, you know, they want to make sure the money goes to the right place. And I think this is a perfect case, perfect use case for blockchain, because, you know, we realize that a lot of financial aid organizations, once the money goes beyond the border and you just transfer it to the project management unit, they don't know where it's going. They completely rely on reports. And I think, and we think this is, this is tragic because, again, people want to donate, but they want to know where their money goes to. And blockchain is so good for that. And as we've demonstrated, right? So it's not just, talking and, having these great decks. I'm talking about actual project that is now being tested and can be very easily adapted to other countries, other financial organizations in order to overcome this.
But don't we run into the same issue with the election problem that we still need good input? So if we're tracking the aid, what's stopping those same fraudulent project managers, whatever, from just inputting hey, yeah, I gave it to this poor family, even though they pocketed it? How does blockchain fix that bad input problem?
Now, this is an excellent question. So we have two solutions for that. I'd say the one for the near future would be simply integrating into banks' IT platforms. So given that there is a KYC, a proper KYC, let's say that you're the financing organization and not the project management unit, you allocate the people to make sure that all the transferees of the funds undergo your KYC procedure. So again, there probably will always be fraud, but how can we make the fraudster's life much more difficult? So let's assume that you approve all the KYC, all the bank accounts. Now the money goes through the banking account. So unless everybody was able to forge, set up new accounts, work with the banks, et cetera, then yeah, the money will be lost, some of it. Still, you will have the full trail. So later on, again, if you want to have, some sort of investigation, where did things go wrong? You will have all the information you need in order to realize that. So this is one. The next phase, which again, it will take time, right? But I hope and think that at some point of the future, this is how it will all happen, is everything on the blockchain, right? So it will not only be mirroring, tracking and tracing, real world or financial transfers, mirroring over the blockchain, but also actually transferring value with tokens. So you will have full control of everything, and no money can be transferred to anyone unless you approve that. So, and then, you can figure out, the mechanisms, how these tokens are redeemed, et cetera, but this is another problem. But in both cases, you improve the situation, by several measures, right? Like at scale compared to what you have now, which is just sending the money and, financing a new hospital with $100 million and hoping that within 3 years, there's going to be a new hospital. If there is, okay, no question asked, you don't know how much it costs. If there isn't, then you're going to say, what happened? And then you're going to get all sorts of answers, which you cannot, this is what you have, right? You have no way of validating them or knowing if it's true or false.
It's very exciting. The prospect of the blockchain technology is so young and so new that it really has very exciting, which directions it may take. What in last question before I let you go, I know you're very busy. What is next for Orbs? What's the future look like?
So we're constantly working on improving our solution. Recently, we've had some very interesting, projects with, I'd say, global organization and one global brand, which due, to confidentiality, we cannot disclose the details right now. But I think working on, having new partners and really driving blockchain adoption. Naturally, our project is, the product itself is constantly being improved and upgraded. So we're looking for that as well. But I'd say, really trying to drive adoption, and I believe it's like a tidal wave, right? The more organizations see other organizations adopt blockchain, they will put more effort into trying to figure out, okay, let's try a look at what they did and what can we do now. And I'd say that usually, and this is like one of the things that I like most, is when you try to, blockchain makes you think differently about solving problems. And it's not that there are no problems out there. It's they require more people to think in a blockchain way, right? How can sharing data with you, and how does being more transparent with you makes me stronger and better, right? And in the business world, in the government, everybody's thinking, and again, it's a good thing. What is the information? How do I keep my information secret? How do I not share information with my competitor because this is my advantage, my so-called advantage? With government, how do I maintain people's privacy, which is, of course, the most important thing. However, blockchain tries to really look at things differently. I think I said that like a million times during this interview, but how sharing information with you, my business competitor, makes me strong. How can we, again, the cliche, how can we as competitors make the pie bigger, right? By sharing information, how can we both benefit, right? And making our market, and, your benefit is my benefit, even though we will keep on competing, right? But, I have information you have. If we share it, then it's for everybody's best interest. So I think that this is what blockchain, this is the idea, what it brings, what it innovates. And the more people, try and think about the challenges in this way, then, it can become more, more frequently used and and more widely adopted.
Well, Ron, you're talking the talk, you're walking the walk. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your information about blockchain and Orbs with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. And for all our viewers at Reimagine 2020, I'm Yonah Hochhauser. Thanks for watching.